The easiest part is being there and waking up in the morning. The hardest part is that the day is very, very filled with a lot of work. Not just work in my office, but work with constituents that come to visit, work with meetings that I have with other congressmen and people from the administration offices to try and promote good government. And then, of course, studying bills, reading bills that come to the floor, working on committee. I'm on Financial Services Committee, and we have a lot of work doing there. Not just working on bills and working on projects like studying the Dodd-Frank bill that's now a year old, but making sure that that Dodd-Frank bill, that we eliminate the provisions that are bad. And from my perspective, all of the provisions of the Dodd-Frank bill are bad, and I would like to see that bill repealed. It has been a lot of work. I'm not shy, or I do not dislike work. I like work, and this type of work is right up my alley. A lot of reading and a lot of talking, and a lot of writing.
You mentioned the Dodd-Frank bill,
right?
And I know you've been strongly opposed to that since you entered.
Since the beginning. Since it was passed a year ago.
So, but my question is, so the Dodd-Frank bill, the purpose of it was meant to regulate the financial industry. Do you think that there should be some sort of mechanism in place to regulate that industry?
You're assuming that there were no regulations to the financial industry before Dodd-Frank.
No. I know there were there's certainly regulations before.
There were regulations that were working and were working properly. This was an attempt to try and blame problems for the financial crash of '08 on just a specific industry, when there was a lot of blame to go around. And what it ended up doing was that it ended up creating agencies and empowering existing financial agencies to the extent that now credit and the credit markets are frozen. And one of the problems, not all of the problems, but one of the biggest problems in the issues that we are faced with today, which is job growth and job creation, is being impeded by Dodd-Frank and the effects that it has had, the chilling effects that it has had on the financial industry. Whether it's a small bank or a credit union or a mid-sized bank or even a large bank, credit is frozen.
But at some point, government is, to a certain extent, supposed to be a watchdog and a regulator. And so, but you're convinced that the regulations that were in place were sufficient?
Were more than sufficient and adequate to solve the problem. We have to remember that the problem that happened in '08, government and politicians had an enormous amount of blame there, especially what were they? Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all those government enterprises.
Sure.
They had a huge hand in the problems, pushed by politicians that were telling them it's okay, go out there and make those loans, go out there and make those loans, when all of the financial sector knew better than to make those loans, but yet they were being pressured by Freddie and Fannie as well as politicians to go out there and create this horrible problem.
You often say that you credit your background as a small businessman.
Yes.
What businesses specifically, and what industry?
Well, in a variety of industries. I've been a lawyer for 36 years. I have built shopping centers for about 20 of those years, 22 of those years, in Texas and in other states. And I was in-house counsel for a bank in Texas until it sold to Norwest in the early 1990s. And then in 1995, I recapitalized the Hondo National Bank in Hondo, Texas, and was on its board and chaired it. until I started running for this seat a year ago. I don't support cuts to Medicare.
You don't support cuts to Medicare?
No. Medicare cuts have been done by the President and by the Democrats in the previous Congress at the tune of $500 billion. That's already been done. What I support is strengthening Medicare, bringing back those $500 billion into Medicare, and strengthening Medicare so that it will survive for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and those that come after them. So it is a misstatement to say that I support cuts to Medicare.
Initially, you voted against the
Correct.
Cut Cap and Balance Act, citing that you don't support raising the debt ceiling.
No, I don't.
But you did vote for the Budget Control Act.
Correct.
Which does just that. It raises the debt ceiling.
Yeah.
Can you speak to? Can you reconcile that? Can you speak to why?
Yes.
Was it a compromise?
No, it was not a compromise. Don't put words in my mouth.
I'm not. I'm asking.
Here's the deal. I am not for raising the debt ceiling. The issue is anything that we did, even that cut cap and balance bill that raised the debt ceiling, everything went to the doorstep of the Senate and held back by Harry Reid. The Budget Control Act that passed last week was a pivot point in an overall strategy to cut spending, cap spending, and balance the budget. It was a measure that could get through the Senate, and even though the provisions of it I'm not comfortable with, and I loathe the raising of the debt ceiling was going to be raised, and it was just a matter of what flavor it was going to be raised. The President wanted to increase taxes and to continue spending. The Budget Control Act does not raise taxes and does not raise spending. It cuts more than it raises the debt ceiling. And it puts controls on the President's spending habits. And it also gives us a unique opportunity to balance the budget. But beyond that, it gave the Congress of the United States, that is only a 1/3 negotiator at the table with the Democrat Senate and the President, a huge leverage. So I call it a pivot point, a turning point, in order to cut more. And remember, I was very much for the budget that we passed for the first time in many years in the Congress. And that budget cuts an enormous amount of money out of our federal spending to the tune of $6.2 trillion. It does not preclude that going through. It does not preclude the number of bills that I have signed on to and that I have voted for that cut more in a variety of areas, including the discretionary budget. It is a game changer for the American people, moving away from the idea that we need to spend more and tax more in order to get our economy into shape. And it's shown it to be a huge mistake, an error, and something that we need to shy away from. In order to get this economy back in shape, we need to cut spending, and we need to cut a lot of the senseless programs that have been passed over the last 2.5 years. Remember, since this president and this administration got into office, this government and this administration has now spent more than $5 trillion. More than $5 trillion, which is an astronomical amount. And that's why we're in the economic shape that we're in. And we've been spending on projects that mean nothing to the American people. And all it does is just freeze our economy and freezes the job growth engine of this nation, which is the private sector. Here's what we've learned, especially over the last 2.5 years.
Sure.
That the engine of our economy is the private sector. that the private sector is hurting very, very badly, and that's why it's not creating jobs. And the reason it's hurting badly is because of all of the uncertainty about taxes, the rules and the regulations that have been promulgated by so many bureaucracies that have erupted over the last 2.5 years, and they can't move. So you cannot raise taxes on them, because if you raise taxes on them, they're not going to be able to hire more people. If you continue to put oppressive rules and regulations on them, they can't grow and they can't hire more people. Compromise, according to the other side, is you all agree with me 100%. And that's what we saw in the last few months of discussion with the President and with Harry Reid in the Senate. You come to me and that's a compromise. Compromise is not going over to the other side and giving in. Compromise is meeting in the middle. And there has been absolutely no effort, none, that anyone can cite on the part of the President or on the part of the Senate to try and even move one iota to the middle. And it's evident with the President's speech yesterday, when he's again talking about higher taxes and more spending in order to get this economy going, which is anathema to getting this economy growing again. I support policies that are going to get this economy back in shape. I support policies that are going to yield back to the private sector the job-creating engine and the ability to grow this economy to its rightful place in the world and not diminish it. I support policies from the executive that are going to be able to once again, with pride, reinstall the American idea of excellence and exceptionalism throughout the world, and as who we are, a character of a nation of Americans. That's who I support for President of the United States. You know, for what he's done and how he has endangered this country, it is my hope that he is a one-term president. You know, I will tell you this. Right now I'm concentrating on being the congressman for the 23rd Congressional District. I'm employing all of my knowledge and skills in order to serve all of the communities of the 23rd Congressional District, and that's what I'm focusing on right now.